Hello, friends, and may I say that spring might have officially sprung? I hope so. Anyway, this is your Daily Detroit for Thursday, April 28th, 2022, and today my conversation is with Certified Executive Chef Kelli Lewton. She's got a new book, Make Your Own Party, and I'm looking forward to getting into some food and some fun. So, Kelli, welcome to Daily Detroit.
Hey, thanks, Jeremiah. I'm really excited to be with you today.
For sure. So I got a little bit of an early preview of this book, and I'm excited because it has both a mix of kind of like how to put together everything from not just the recipes, but also kind of vignettes and ways to give people a theme to what they're doing, to elevate it up, but it's still very approachable.
Yeah, so this book has kind of been rolling around in my trajectory, honestly, for about a decade. And people always say to me, "Oh, I can't do what you do." Or, I mean, even people having like 8 or 10 people at their house, they're like, "Oh, no, Kelli, like it's too complicated." And entertaining is something that we go to large weddings, we go to professional events. Maybe it was our mom or our grandmother who was fancy schmancy, and we get this idea in our head, and we're like, "Oh no, we can never do that." So what I wanted to do is sort of like take the mystery out of like having an event. And I think, Jeremiah, my biggest push is like to give people permission to party, permission to do it their way. You'll find in the book, I'm like, hey, get some cool paper plates or go to the thrift store and buy a mismatched collection of things. If you live in an apartment and you have a little terrace, we can make a party there. So I think what I'm trying to tell people is perhaps the things that they see in like super fancy books or they remember from a big country club wedding. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but it sort of makes entertaining a little scary when you try to measure up to like different levels that maybe aren't approachable for you. So I feel in the book what we're trying to do is tell people to take what they want and leave the rest behind. I mean, they could go in a chapter and get 3 amazing ideas, and that might be enough for them, and the recipes that follow. One of my favorite things about the book is it sort of gives you a baseline for everything, Jeremiah. Even if you're going to maybe have a graduation party, like to me, the investment in that book would have been like tenfold. Maybe you're going to have rentals. I mean, just to understand, like, how do you cover tables? Like, what kind of tables do you need? So there's kind of like an anatomy section where we talk about all of those things. So there's a really good core of things as well as some basic cooking terms and instructions. And then we roll into the whole kind of different blueprints. And we have 20 of them, and they all have a little swagger to them. Like in spring, we might say, hey, like grab a this or that, or maybe you have some old buckets in the garage. Let's clean them up. Let's put some flowers in them. So I think a lot of things are inviting people to use what they have around them, and I give all sorts of like tips and tricks. And then Kevin Miller, who's one of my besties, and he's been working with me on my Fox 2 segments for, oh gosh, 7, 8 years. He also has some wonderful like floral ideas that he lent to the book. And also we collaborated on design.
You were talking about comparison, and it's true not just here, but in a lot of things. Comparison can be the thief of joy.
Oh my gosh, it can be the thief of joy. Like someone's skinnier, someone's prettier, someone has better plates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a terrible thing we do to ourselves. So I think the book is trying to push people to just do them, just do you, right?
Yeah, yeah. So what got you to the idea of doing these blueprints? Because, it's so much more in depth than a recipe book. Like the recipes are easy to follow. They're clearly put together. Somebody who cooks myself, it's like, all right, this is good. But to take it to the next level with blueprints, what called you to do that?
Well, I do own a large catering and event planning company, and everything we do is kind of off a matrix of a blueprint. So, like, there was a little bit of a technical brain in that. But I think that if you give people like a solid base, like and don't get me wrong, recipes are important. Like I'm a chef, I taught culinary arts for 25 years in addition to owning 2 unique and event planners. But if you give people a blueprint, it kind of gives them permission to fly. And let me explain that a little bit more. So perhaps in one of the stations where I have like a slider bar, I might have just written it like a menu, Jeremiah, like, hey, this one has bacon and onions, and we're calling it the Buffalo Bill, and the turkey burger could have guac and this and that. I mean, it's really not a recipe. It's just like these are the toppings you need to make this particular style of a slider. So some things, I mean, I would say 85% of the book, there's some true recipes, and there's also some spaces where it's like, hey, you know what? if you want to have a guacamole bar and you don't want to make your own, that's fine. And here's some things you can add to it to kind of like just give it a little kick up. Some people are super busy. Some people want to cook from scratch, and some people just want some suggestions to sort of like up their game with buying some things they may find in the marketplace. But again, there's kind of a combination of, mainly recipes, but also just some ideas to, kind of help you elevate whatever you may be doing.
Now, there are a bunch of these different blueprints to look at. As far as like design and tables and things, what is kind of the vignette that is your favorite? Or is that like trying to ask someone to pick their favorite kid?
It's funny. It is like trying to ask someone to pick their favorite kid, but they're kind of all my favorites because I got to pick the 20 chapters, right? So I kind of picked all my favorites. But I would say when you get to the chapters, there's probably 5 or 6 that were shot outdoors. Like probably Urban Picnic, that's kind of our centerfold. I think that's maybe like leaning towards my favorite. We had this cool, like amazing, like building downtown that has a huge history, and we kind of talk about it in the book. So we picked a great spot and we had a beautiful day, and we had like all Detroit products and like literally what I tell people to do at home, like, hey, take the rug out of your den and throw it on the grass if it's not going to rain and sit on it. Like that's kind of what we did in the book. So I think like my own personal style kind of lends to a little boho and not so many rules. And I feel like that chapter was like a super good example of that. Also in the book, I try to make things practical for people. Like if you're going to a picnic, you probably don't want to have like, oodles of hot food. So we tried to make like beautiful, elevated, cold food and room temperature is not a bad word either. Like, there's some things, even a really good sandwich, if you're going to pre-make it, you don't want to eat it right out of the refrigerator. You want it to, come up a few degrees so you can really taste the meat. So I think most of the menus like are super paired for like whatever your circumstances are. Another fun chapter was Star Spangled Banner, and that was like 4th of July. And like, I really think like we made a hot dog bar look like sexy, and it's fun. Like just these little ideas that you can use to, kind of really like take a picnic outside on wooden tables without any fancy stuff and just make it really special. So
Well, and it makes it special while being accessible as well. Part of it is when I open up a recipe book, I'm somebody who, I can cook a lot of things, but I think for most people who are getting into things, they want to work with ingredients that they know and start there and then work their way up as they build confidence.
exactly. And I think actually all the chapters, there's a couple tricky recipes, but I think all the chapters are something that anybody could do themselves. I mean, they're not like, something that has 3 days of prep. Like we're talking about approachable food, beautiful food, drink pairings. I think, the drink pairing is an important part of the book too, because sometimes like when your food is great, but your drink situation is like out of whack. So perhaps like if you're entertaining at home, like you don't have to like figure out like 20 different bottles of different alcohols. Maybe it's like a one beautiful craft cocktail you make yourself. Some of the chapters are, on game night, we had like a root beer float like, and then, of course you could put liquor in that in some way, shape, or form if you wanted to, but it's just kind of nice to have a very like drink centric, pairing with your menu. And actually it ends up being much less expensive than trying to do too much.
That is so key. Like when I've thrown events, sometimes there is this urge for people to want to offer everything under the sun. At the end of the day, I think it's a lot better to have a few things be the star of the show, and then people can get excited about it and they can remember it. Because if you throw too much at people, they don't remember what you serve them.
Right. No, I think intentional cocktails or, and it doesn't always have to be again alcohol. Like we do beautiful like water stations here at my catering company, like 3 different kinds of, infused waters, and they're in big crystal bowls, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, what's that?" Like they want to drink water all day out, you know what I mean? But I think that yes, the drink pairings are a wonderful thing, and I see that actually in our wedding business now that people are just kind of going different. Like it's 2 craft cocktails, and it's like a beautiful wine selection and sparkling water. And I'm not a hater of anything like soda pop, but you know what? Some people at their weddings just want to have like this really clean, beautiful, elevated look. And actually, it's a lot less expensive than having like a whole bunch of other things that you may or may not use that you can't take back.
Oh, 100%. And the growth of non-alcoholic cocktails has been a real thing, whether it's people who are making a decision or just want to take a break and kind of break things up. I have found a lot of really great non-alcoholic cocktails that I enjoy and sip. I kind of like think of it as like a porch sipper. that I enjoy just as much and, save the gas for the right time.
Exactly. Even when you get into like, your graduation season, like that's sort of like a big conversation as of late because we're all trying to be like, so careful, right? And there's liability and there's, we don't want to add to any sort of like shenanigans with youth, but a lot of my clients and will even suggest it. Yeah, especially during like more of the kids programming of perhaps a graduation party, like just have like beautiful fruity drinks with no alcohol. Like, virgin cocktails are like a huge thing right now, Jeremiah. I agree with you. And they're delicious.
Yeah, yeah, especially in the fizz category. I've had like 3 fizzes in the last 2 weeks that were just really good. There's something about that style that also fits well in the non-alcoholic world, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And all the botanicals. I mean, it's funny. I love crab cocktails and we make, all sorts of concoctions over here, but even like my good friends at the whiskey factory, like, oh my gosh, like the things they come up with, I'm like, what is that? I'm like watching and there's like, all these different like herbs being like swirled in. And then I was just somewhere last week where they have like a little smoke gun and they put the little top on and then they go to the table and they take the little top off and then it's like this aroma of smoke with your bourbon. I mean, everything's so fancy now. It's kind of cool, kind of fun.
Oh, I enjoy it, and, actually, it's funny because our, audio engineer is a huge fan of craft cocktails and tiki drinks, and so our studio is always stocked in both the alcoholic
Nice.
and non-alcoholic options because he'll just come in and he'll be like, "Oh, alright, well, this is what we're having now," and it's absolutely fabulous, just takes things up a notch. It strikes me, and you've got so much in your resume and so much talent, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you because, we're a locally focused show, locally owned, so I really love when somebody is doing so much, but they've chosen to be local and be here and kind of make this their base. What about Metro Detroit has been so good for you and why you've chosen to make this your home?
Well, I'm definitely a Michigander. I'm from Michigan. I grew up in Michigan, and I've owned my catering company for 33 years now. And I always joke around with like some of like the young hipster chefs, right? And I love them all, and half of them were my students at Schoolcraft College. But before it was like cool to do stuff in Detroit, like I'm old enough that I was doing stuff in Detroit. You know what I mean? Like before Detroit had like 50 of the best restaurants in the universe. Before all of that, so like I'm like old school Jeremiah, and I was like working in the city when what there was a lot of people that weren't working in the city. There was a lot of people that were not helping businesses that were embedded down there, even with like corporate catering. And we have so many wonderful relationships in Detroit with I mean every large venue. I mean I could name them off. I don't know if you want me to do that or not, but we 10 to 12, 15 different venues. We create beautiful memories and events of people that want to be downtown, that want to be in the vibe down there. And, off-premise catering is a very complicated thing. And there's not really that many of us that can really like take the show on the road and make it unfold in beautiful ways. So our partnerships in Detroit are so important to us. Actually, that's where a majority of our event business happens.
Yeah, in a former life, I worked in a corporate communications department, and you know how those can sometimes be junk drawers that end up having like everything assigned to them that doesn't fit somewhere else.
Sure.
And a lot of times we would end up doing events and things, and it is absolutely a huge challenge to do an off-premise event. And I think it's speaks very highly to your skill and your team's skill to be able to pull them off, so well.
Well, thank you for that. I always say, well, my team is everything. And every day when I walk in the door and I see them, I say like a little prayer, thank God they're here again today. But I always call us the Navy SEALs. Like we're the Navy SEALs of the event world. Like we have these trucks and we have equipment and we have created processes over 33 years where we can get beautiful things places without breaking them. We have relationships with different vendors and stylists. And, I think another big thing that captures my heart about Detroit is ways to give back. Like with the book Jeremiah, we're partnering with the Detroit Food Academy, and it's an amazing organization that comes alongside youth from 10 to 24, and they love on them through the vehicle of food, but they're teaching them after school cooking programs. But really, what they're doing is, showing them how to get along with people. They're teaching them to be entrepreneurs. They're coming alongside of them, helping them problem solve. So although food is the vehicle, and some may grow up and be chefs, and that's great. We'd like to have some of those people in our house. But above and beyond that, they're just doing so much with youth in the community. They have an entrepreneurship program with which has created things you would find at the Eastern Market, like, the granola small bites and slow jams and, wonderful products, Detroit Pop Shop. So we're really blessed and favored to be doing some work with them. I like to do work with, Boss Blue down there, which is kind of just kicked off about a little over a year ago. And it's, serving so many wonderful charities down there. So Eastern Market, we like to do things with them, pop up classes, whatever we can. So farmers, I mean, there's so many people in Detroit that we're all trying to, elevate and to come alongside with. So as far as like even philanthropically speaking, like, Detroit definitely captures my heart as well as my teammates here at TNE.
I think it's just so important that when you do well, to do good, right? I think the two of those things
Yes,
are really intertwined.
absolutely. To give back is so important. And that's what we try to do. And that's what the book is doing. Like every book sold forever in perpetuity, like Detroit Food Academy will benefit from that. And then our fundraiser on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. And it's funny because we didn't plan it this way, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I realized like this little kind of corny anomaly, but Cinco de Mayo, but most people call my book Mayo because it's MYO. So we're having Cinco de MYO at the Detroit Whiskey Factory.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, and I'm glad that you shared around it. I just wanted to make sure that people knew about like when this book was coming out, how they can support what you're doing, all that kind of good stuff.
We call it the Look at the Book, and it's our book launch. But what it really is a fundraiser for the Detroit Food Academy and to raise awareness. I mean, we're hoping people get to know them at the event. Maybe they'll think about sponsoring some students or helping in other ways and volunteerism. So that's a great thing about the party. It's $60, and you can find a ticket at chefkellilewton.com. And the book is $35, and that comes embedded with your ticket. So really the party's only $25 if you take the book price out. So that'll be fun. It's going to be 6 to 9 p.m. That's a great way to support the Detroit Food Academy. But above and beyond that, you can buy a book direct from my website at chefkellilewton.com, or of course you can find the book wherever good books are sold, from Barnes and Noble to Amazon to, we always like to support, the local bookstores. I'm doing a signing at one of the Detroit bookstores in a few weeks, but I just can't recall the name off the top of my head. But it's always nice to shop local when you can too. So, I mean, think about that. Like, think about maybe a book purchase as an experience. You go out, you look at a whole bunch of books, and then you walk away with a hardcover one in your hand that doesn't come in the mail. And nothing against buying stuff online. I do it all the time. But again, just trying to support some brick and mortars in our community is never a bad thing, Jeremiah.
Oh, I agree completely. And we have some local bookstore owners that are listening, so shout out to them. All right, Kelli Lewton, thank you so much for your time on Daily Detroit, and good luck with your book and everything.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. I was so excited to be with you today.
All right, tomorrow, Devin O'Reilly will be joining me. We're going to be talking about so many things in Metro Detroit, including Belle Isle getting some road trolleys, which I'm really excited about. All right, before I let you go, remember 5 stars, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to shows. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.